Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to just do a sort of a summing up of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, and now we've got the verdict in and not guilty. Let me repeat that, not guilty on all counts. So I want to look at that and just go through some of the key evidence again, but also to look at how the media that have defamed Mr. Rittenhouse from day one, how they're now covering his innocence and these not guilty verdicts that have come down. So also looking at the Rittenhouse trial in the wider context of the sort of madness that's going on in the Western world today. And for example, whether it be Britain or the United States, Australia, there's a project on to create this illusion, and it's an illusion, but absolutely an illusion. There are white supremacists everywhere, and they're all Hitlers and Nazis everywhere you look, under every bed, every closet, around every corner. No one ever knows them. They can never name them. They can't seem to find things that they've done or things that they've planned. They seem to be mysteriously unseen, but they're nonetheless everywhere, we're told. And this is only in the countries, the nations of the world, where the globalists are really making a push for total control. Just so happens, coincidentally, that white supremacists are only in those countries. Now, isn't that amazing? But there you go. So I'd like to look at that and then try and wrap it all up and bring it together and see what we can make of it all. Now, quite a few people have been commenting about how this is a huge victory, and we really showed those leftist globalist bums, and we slapped down those damn evil Democrats and so on. I actually don't see it that way. I see this was a very close run thing, and we've got a lot of work to do. We've got reasons to be, I believe, still deeply concerned about many things. Now, firstly, this was an open and shut case of self-defense. There was no need for a legal case. So we have to be deeply concerned about how politicized the district attorney's office and the office of governor and so on in Wisconsin was. Indeed, the Democratic Party generally, I have no doubt that the governor was getting calls from national Democrats, if not, people who were involved in setting up the election for Joe Biden to win. All these sorts of people. There were a lot of folks out there looking for political angles, and I'm almost convinced they would have been leaning on the governor and any political folks in the state, the Attorney General, and in turn the District Attorney's office would have been leaned on. This was very political. Now, before they could even have conducted an investigation, Mr. Rittenhouse was arrested before they even had the evidence, even the preliminary evidence. So clearly that was a political arrest. And then they after that, they went looking for the evidence and brought charges that again were clearly, in my view, clearly political. And Mr. Rittenhouse spent time in prison, had to post a bail of $2 million. A 17-year-old kid, as he then was. What 17-year-old kid has to post a $2 million bail? What bullshit. So Mr. Rittenhouse was treated from moment one in an extremely prejudicial manner, not only by the district attorney's office and the body politic in Wisconsin, but by the Biden team, who are wanting to fan the flames of racial tension. They thought would carry him legitimately into the White House, or hoped would carry him legitimately into the White House. So, and the media went into hyperdrive. There was I think maybe only one of the major stations stayed pretty neutral on it and said, based on the evidence, the video evidence, that it was unlikely he was guilty of anything other than self-defense. But the entire media establishment, the globalist-controlled media establishment. They were after Mr. Rittenhouse from the first moment, out to get him, to defame him, to present all the evidence in an absolutely negative light, and just to tell outright, outrageous, grotesque lies, lie after lie after lie about Mr. Rittenhouse. So when we look at that, the arrest, which I believe was a false arrest, and we look at the charges, which were political and concocted and invented, in my view, the $2 million bail, again quite political in my view, and the media storm, and the federal politicians, people who should have known better that this was sub judice before the court, given charges have been laid. So there was all that. Now, on top of that, a case like this, judges have the power to look at the evidence in a case that's being brought and say, this is no evidence, this is not enough evidence to convict. What is this even doing in my court? Clearly this person is not guilty of what you're alleging. So I'm throwing this case out. Now, that was an option that the judge had and didn't take it. And I'm sure because of the overall political pressure and the high tension and drama that was now surrounding a case that should never have got this far in the first place. So the judge under a lot of pressure there. I don't think the judge got leaned on. I think that was just a step too far. He was a Democrat operative and a very experienced judge. He'd been on the bench for quite a while. So I don't think they leaned on. If they did, it was very gently. I don't think they wanted to threaten him or anything like that. I think at that point, they sort of left it alone. But nonetheless, the judge didn't throw it out, and Mr. Rittenhouse was put through an incredibly tense situation there in the courtroom, which I think overall he handled quite well. The fact that he's only 18. The fact that he broke down a number of times or a couple of times is something that they tried to exploit. Must be guilty, which is of course nonsense. Again, another attempt to exploit anything to try and weave it into the narrative that they want, which is all straight white males are evil. So given that, and given the length of time the jury deliberated, I see it as a close-run thing. If the prosecution had gone a little bit further in maybe concocting a few Christine Blasey Ford witnesses. Yes, I saw him shaking hands with Hitler around the corner. Yeah, that definitely. Oh, yeah, Hitler was there, and they were, and all they've got to do is invent a couple of witnesses like that. That would have been enough to sway the jury. So they didn't quite go that far. But make no mistake, the next Kyle Rittenhouse trial that comes up, and there'll be another one. Maybe they'll false flag it. Maybe the FBI will set it up. They'll have witnesses that will appear. I saw Nazi flags. Yeah, Your Honor. Yeah, hundreds of Nazi flags. Hitler was definitely there. I saw Hitler there. They're going to have those sort of witnesses are going to come out of the woodwork. And next time, the first time in 2016, Trump won because they didn't expect him to. They weren't going to make that mistake the next time. And we all know what happened then. So the next Kyle Rittenhouse trial, there'll be Nazi flags everywhere. There'll be witnesses coming out. So the left and the globalist left, they don't see this as a loss necessarily. They see it as an annoyance and an inconvenience. Oh, well, we didn't get away with it this time. But they're doubling down already the narrative that's come out. And I'll come to some of the news stories in a minute. So they don't need to change too much in the architecture of that that trial. They need to change. They just need to insist that an activist judge hears the case. Behind the scenes, that can be effortlessly organised. The same activist judges that are jailing the people who were in January 6th in Washington, D.C. That one activist judge after another is hearing these cases. That can't be an accident. That's a setup, for goodness sakes. So Next time, they'll make sure an activist judge hears it. They'll make sure that there's FBI agents setting it up. They'll make sure that there's Christine Blasey Ford witnesses that are coming along, complete after many days and hours practicing in front of the cameras to make sure that the tears and the hairstyle and the glasses and everything fits perfectly with the image of the put upon, hard done by victim and that sort of thing. They'll make sure of the evidence. They'll withhold evidence. They'll bury evidence that's not. They'll make a much harder, bigger case next time. Now, maybe it won't be so clear cut as this one was, but for a clear cut case, this clear cut, it was still a close run thing. And next time, I don't think they're going to make those same mistakes. They won't leave anything to chance anymore, as they didn't in the presidential election. Everything was the fake ballots. Everything was ready to rock and roll. Come election day, and they'll have that for the next case. Maybe they're already planning that now. They need a case that has white supremacy written all over it. And I'm just going to take a moment's break, if you don't mind. Here, the birdies are there. We've got this bunch of very colourful parrots that come onto the back balcony, and they were doing it tough recently, so we've kind of been looking after them. Anyway, they just appeared on the balcony while I was in the middle of this dissertation. So I waved to my wife and said, "Look, the parrots are there." So I see this as a very close run thing. I see that they're itching now for a rematch. They'll be scouring the nation from top to bottom, looking for a trial that they can bring in and win. And look, AR-15s crossing state line. They'll have all that baked into the pie that I would imagine they're already putting together as we speak. Now, coming to the media, none of the left wing, globalist left wing media, they're all globalist owned now. The globalist owned left wing, none of them are prepared to walk back their claims. Now, if there is any watering down, it's on a 1,000-word piece. It's by about word 700 that they'll bury a couple of short sentences in there. But that's it. That's otherwise they're just switching it around. So basically, and if I look at the top 10 stories, it's the same. I mean, you Google it and you'll find the top. Certainly, when I've just Googled it, the top 10 stories that you'll find will be all from. They're still defaming Mr. Rittenhouse. The claims are that the judge was is a white supremacist and stopped the prosecution from making their case and helped the Rittenhouse defence team to the point where the defence lawyers didn't need to do anything. The judge did it all for them, which is absolute utter nonsense. They're also they're trying this vigilante thing. They love this vigilante thing. I don't accept that Mr. Rittenhouse was a vigilante. I mean, I'll come back to that in a minute, but I don't think he meets the definition of a vigilante. He wasn't out there to administer arbitrary justice. Far from it. He was attacked. He was attacked by habitual career criminals, and he defended himself. That's it. That's all he did. So I don't accept that he's a vigilante. I don't accept the narrative around that. We need to come back to the basic and initial point here. An innocent man was charged, and that in itself is a crime, and that to me is probably the greatest crime, or certainly among the greatest crimes of this whole sorry debacle. Now, the idea is that, and the lies that are told, unarmed black protest, Jacob Blake was shot and killed by a racist white police officer. Now, there's something wrong with this. Firstly, Mr. Blake wasn't killed. Secondly, he wasn't unarmed. And thirdly, it was a struggle with a police officer where the guy had a knife. It just happened that he was black, and this was ruthlessly exploited by the social dividers in our community, of which the of which the mainstream media are primary among them, to fan the flame. Now, then there was a riot in Kenosha, which the governor and the attorney general's office and all the police force decided to do nothing about, and so the place descended into temporary anarchy, particularly with the arson and the looting and the multiple fires and just criminal property damage and damage to motor vehicles and so on. So now Mr. Rittenhouse went there to deter people from standing in front of removing graffiti from walls, and then went to assist some other people who were wanting to deter rioters and looters and arsonists from burning down a car yard. I think it was a used car yard. And so that's hardly, in fact, that's very, very civic-minded. Now, given that Mr. Rittenhouse was also offering first aid to injured people and going into harm's way, it's not unreasonable he would carry some sort of defence as a deterrent from people trying to attack him, among other things. So he was performing a community service. He's a police cadet, a fire cadet. He's also a lifeguard. And it'd be hard to find someone that age who'd be more civic-minded than Mr. Rittenhouse. And maybe that's something that particularly annoys the globalist left. They want to destroy all civic-mindedness because civic-minded people stand up for legal rights and they stand up for democracy and the rule of law and those sorts of things. So they have to crush the entire white Western world because they're visiting the people who come from the third world countries. They don't give a shit about that. It's only the white people. And so civic-minded white people, particularly civic-minded white people, have to be crushed. And that's another reason why Mr. Rittenhouse was treated so shabbily by the legal political system. So if we look at the I think it was out of the 4, and now another one's been identified, as far as I can tell, out of the 5 people who are in and around, 4 of them directly attacking Mr. Rittenhouse, they all had criminal records. Now, what are the chances? What are the chances you could have 4 or 5 people standing in front of you? This is like random, they're chasing him and there's crowds of people moving around and he's trying to run away from them. And what are the chances that you could be in front of that many people who were career criminals? What are the odds of that? What sort of people are being mobilised into Antifa and BLM? What sort of people are being used for that? How are they there? These people are, they certainly don't have consistent employment records or anything like that. Where's the money coming from for what they're doing and the travelling that they do and the guns that they buy? Where are they getting the money to do that? That'll be an interesting story in itself. So Mr. Rittenhouse was being attacked by these people, shot in self-defense, but the way it's being spun is that the mainstream media are saying these people, no mention is made of their career criminality. Out of the 10 pieces, 10 articles I looked at, not one of them mentions it. They concede Rosenbaum had depression, but that's about as far as it goes. The rest of them, they don't talk anything about it. As far as you'd be concerned, these were just innocent people milling around that were randomly shot. Now, the inference in all these pieces is that there's a justified social justice protest going on because of the shooting of the black guy who tried to attack the policeman with a knife. So that was why then there's the inference. There's no mention of arson and looting and so on and the violence. It's depicted as if they were all just social justice protesters for black lives, and completely justified, completely reasonable, and they were all holding candles and singing Kumbaya. But along come all these damn fascist white Hitler Nazis. That's the narrative they push, which is of course utterly absurd, apart from being factually incorrect. So they're still sticking with that narrative. That a vigilante comes, it shouldn't have been there, all these innocent, peaceful protesters. Now, if you talk to people who who only follow the mainstream media or read The Guardian or the New York Times or something like that, they have the view that the people that were shot were all black, were all peacefully, walking down the street in a candlelight vigil for the black guy that wasn't murdered, and Jacob Blake, and then they were just randomly shot by white supremacists. That's it. Now, nothing could be further from the truth. But the media is still depicting that. They're still running with that general, not asserting it directly, but inferring it, suggesting it, and implying it. Now, it doesn't take long to look at the bios of the journalists, and they're not fucking journalists. They're screaming activists that have got article after article, piece after piece, saying that all straight white men are evil and so on. So they're hardly going to objective journalists but now when the trial's over, they know the facts. They know the facts. There's no excuse anymore. So, well, it hasn't been tested in court, or we don't know. So when they make an allegation, when they say something against Mr. Rittenhouse, they assert it as fact. When they do mention the other side of it, they suggest that it's just alleged. That's what the Rittenhouse team said. But the facts are, so they infer that the lies are the facts and the facts are the lies. It's insanity on that. But this is my take on this, that was a close run thing. And if any one of those components, all you needed was an activist judge, and they can do it if they want to. All you need is an activist judge being put in to hear a case like this, and that's it. That's all they've got to do, is disallow a bit of evidence here, accept a bit of crappy evidence over there, and that the whole thing can be turned around. A completely different verdict can be rendered. So my feeling is that we're only starting the real battle, and the battle must be that we insist on the rule of law and due legal process in independent, impartial courts of law. If that's an activist judge, don't hear it, and insist that activist judges have no place in hearing, particularly these flashpoint type cases. Why? And I hope, just to add, I hope the Rittenhouse legal team, or if there's another legal team he brings in, sue the living crap out of all these mainstream news stations that have so willfully and knowingly defamed an innocent man. You've been with Tassus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.
Tell you what, it's a fucking circus.